No changes in immigration clearance arrangements at Lowu checkpoint after the completion of Lowu port upgrade. A suspected murder attempt in a Tuen Mun public housing unit. And WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange returns to his home country of Australia. Hello and welcome to TVB News. The Security Bureau said there will be no changes in immigration clearance arrangements or other services after the completion of the Lowu port upgrade. Shenzhen authorities currently have no plans to connect the MTR's East Rail line with the city's Luohu district. Timothy Lee tells us more.
The trend of Hong Kongers crossing the border to spend their free time continues to be on the rise, with the Lowu port remaining the most popular border crossing. An average of 138,000 people passed through the port per day in 2023. Shenzhen municipal authorities had earlier conducted major rebuilding work for the cross-border checkpoint, given several facilities such as the Frontier Inspection Station have been in use since the 1980s. There were reports the Lowu station on the MTR's East Rail line could be moved towards the north in a bid to attract more mainland tourists to Hong Kong and implement the co-location arrangement measure. In his response to lawmakers' questions on the matter today, Secretary for Security Chris Tang stressed Shenzhen authorities are upgrading the boundary crossing mainly for security reasons and improving its functions. He noted such changes are only limited to Shenzhen, adding that there are no plans to extend the East Rail line into the mainland. The Secretary for Security also emphasized the overall layout of facilities of the Lowu port and customs clearance policies for travelers will not change after the renovation. A lawmaker was surprised by the lack of change in the cross-border measure. Dennis Lam said policies preventing smooth people flow between the GBA cities are regressive, owing to the strong interaction between Hong Kong and mainland residents, as well as the flow of goods and data within the region. This, as lawmaker Gary Zhang stressed the challenges for the tens of thousands of people who cross the border every day, and urged Hong Kong authorities to consider upgrading the Lowu MTR station. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
A man is on the run after attempting to murder his wife and 3 daughters through charcoal burning in Tuen Mun. The mother and daughters remained conscious while on their way to the hospital. Police are now looking for the man. The incident happened in King On House at Shan King Estate in Tuen Mun. Police received a call from a 44-year-old woman early this morning. The caller said she and her 3 daughters, aged between 13 and 16, did not feel well and suspected her husband had tried to kill them. Sources say the mother and daughters felt sleepy after dinner at around 9 last night. At around 2 a.m. today, one of the daughters saw that the gap under the apartment door was covered with tape. She asked her father about the tape but was ignored. The daughter later tore away the tape while the man left the unit 30 minutes later. The mother woke up at 6 a.m. and saw some burnt charcoal soaked in water. She and her 3 daughters felt dizzy and reported the incident to the police. The 4 were first sent to hospital. Sources say the incident may have been caused by financial issues. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange walked free from a court in the U.S. Pacific Island territory of Saipan today. This after he pleaded guilty to violating U.S. espionage laws in a deal that allowed him to head straight home to Australia. Daniel Rao tells us more.
The release of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange ended a 14-year legal saga. Assange had spent more than 5 years in a British high-security jail and 7 years in asylum at the Ecuadorian embassy in London, battling extradition to Sweden on sexual assault allegations, and to the US, where he faced 18 criminal charges. Those charges stem from WikiLeaks' release in 2010 of hundreds of thousands of classified US military documents on Washington's wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, one of the largest breaches of secret information in US history. While the US government viewed Assange as reckless for putting its agents at risk of harm by publishing their names, supporters of Assange hailed him as a hero for promoting free speech and exposing war crimes. The deal that secured Assange's release required him to admit guilt to a single felony count, but also permitted him to return to Australia without any time in an American prison. During a 3-hour hearing in Saipan, Assange pleaded guilty to one criminal count of conspiring to obtain and disclose classified national defense documents. However, he said he had believed the US Constitution's First Amendment, which protects free speech, shielded his activity. Chief US District Judge Ramona V. Manglona accepted his guilty plea, noting the US government indicated there was no personal victim from Assange's actions. The judge sentenced Assange to the 5 years he'd already spent behind bars in the United Kingdom, fighting extradition to the United States before releasing him. Outside the court, Assange's US lawyer stressed the Australian should never have been charged under the US Espionage Act.
The prosecution of Julian Assange is unprecedented. In the 100 years of the Espionage Act, it has never been used by the United States to pursue a publisher, a journalist like Mr. Assange. Mr. Assange revealed truthful, important, and newsworthy information, including revealing that the United States had committed war crimes, and he has suffered tremendously in his fight for free speech, for freedom of the press, and to ensure that the American public and the world community gets truthful and important newsworthy information.
The Australian government pushed hard for Assange's release and raised the issue with the United States several times. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese told his country's parliament he is pleased Assange is coming home after being incarcerated for what he said was far too long.
Now, regardless of your views about his activities, and they will be varied, Mr. Assange's case has dragged on for too long. I've said repeatedly that there was nothing to be gained by his continued incarceration.
Dan Rowell, TV News.
Deadly chaos in the Kenyan capital as police fired at protesters who stormed the parliament after lawmakers passed a controversial tax hike on Tuesday. At least 5 people were fatally shot and dozens were injured. This report from NBC News.
Tonight, police firing on thousands of unarmed protesters, killing at least 5 and wounding dozens. After protesters stormed the Kenyan parliament over a proposed tax law, setting fire to parts of the building as legislators fled. The uprising over a $2.7 billion new tax bill as Kenya struggles to pay down its debt from COVID, the Ukraine war, and 2 years of drought. But young people are furious with the country's President William Ruto, elected less than 2 years ago on a promise to help the poor. Tonight's violence shattering the glittery image the world saw just last month at a lavish White House state dinner, when the Bidens celebrated Kenya's leader as an important Western ally. Former President Obama, whose father was Kenyan, came to the reception.
Food security experts at the UN warn Gaza is still on the brink of famine. Aid is coming in, but not quick enough amid security concerns as the Israel-Hamas war continues. A report says a ceasefire is needed before conditions are safe enough for mass food distribution, with one humanitarian organization describing conditions as subhuman. David Garrett reports.
These children are not just sick, they are hungry. A report from the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, made up of dozens of UN agencies and aid groups, predicts catastrophe if things don't change. It found around a quarter of Gaza's population is facing the highest levels of hunger. Many are children.
More than half of the population does not have any food to eat in the house, and over 20% going entire days and nights without eating.
Help is coming via the sea. Vessels have begun docking at a US-built pier. Construction has suffered delays, but lorries with tons of aid were seen entering the enclave. The report found more aid has got in the last couple of months, but more is required. For an effective response, 3 things are a must.
Number 1, we should have enough commodities, whether commercial, whether humanitarian, coming into Gaza Strip. Number 2, people who are bringing this stuff must be safe. And number 3, people who are receiving these things need to be safe. And if we can make sure of those 3 things, which I don't know how you can do without a ceasefire.
Another diplomatic push for a ceasefire in the US, which laid out a plan nearly a month ago. The US and Israeli defense chiefs meeting Washington, but with little progress. China is trying to get a ceasefire. Beijing's permanent representative to the United Nations referenced the US proposal, but said we haven't seen signs of a ceasefire. We have witnessed major casualties and humanitarian agencies in danger, he said. David Garrett, TVB News.
The European Union has begun the process of allowing Ukraine to join the EU, although it is a long road that could take years to complete. Ukraine will have to reform to meet EU standards and adapt to many social and economic rules. The EU has also announced it is in talks with Moldova. Both countries are keen to distance themselves politically from historical ties to Moscow. Still ahead, Japan's Emperor and Empress officially start their state visit to the UK. The opening of the 8th China-Eurasia Expo in Xinjiang. And July 1st discount offers for diners at more than 2,000 restaurants. Welcome back. Japan's Emperor Naruhito and Empress Masako, who officially started their 3-day visit to the UK on Tuesday, attended a welcome ceremony and a state dinner hosted by King Charles and Queen Camilla. It is the first state visit to the UK by a Japanese head of state since 1998, ushering in renewed exchanges between the two royal houses over the past 150 years. Danny Zhou has the story.
Britain's King Charles III and Queen Camilla gave Japan's Emperor Naruhito and Empress Masako a red carpet welcome in London on Tuesday. They took a ceremonial carriage ride on Horse Guards Parade, where prestigious regiments are on display. After a private lunch at Buckingham Palace, the royals walked into the picture gallery and marveled at displays of Japanese items from a royal collection. The exhibition also included a memoir on River Thames written by Naruhito over 30 years ago during his study in Britain, which underscored his fascination with the waterway. Naruhito and Masako also laid a wreath at the grave of the unknown warrior at Westminster Abbey in honor of the fallen of the 2 world wars and other conflicts. And the Emperor requested a visit to the tomb of the late Queen Elizabeth II at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle.
Kanpai.
Starting from the Japanese toast kanpai, a glittering state banquet was thrown at Buckingham Palace at the end of the day with golden cutlery and a solemn string quartet. King Charles lauded the two countries' close ties forged from the lessons of history, including its darkest years.
From energy and the environment to supply chains and semiconductors, from cybersecurity and sustainable food supplies to defense industrial collaboration, our governments are working together to provide a stable world for future generations.
Naruhito and Masako will visit Oxford University, where they both studied, and tour one of Britain's premier biomedical research institutes. But they have no plan for meeting with British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, as their trip coincided with the general election campaign. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
The 8th China-Eurasia Expo opened in Xinjiang today. It features not just traditional Xinjiang farm products, but also the region's new energy industries. Jackie Lin reports from Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang.
The China-Eurasia Expo this year is themed New Opportunities of Silk Road, New Vitality for Eurasian Cooperation. At the opening ceremony, Ma Xingrui, Party Secretary of Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, said the expo is an important platform for deeper cooperation among China, Central Asian and European countries. He said Xinjiang will embrace new business opportunities, while the pilot-free trade zone in Xinjiang has also provided new impetus for local development. Apart from Central Asian participants, business delegations from the U.S. and European countries also came to attend the 5-day event in Xinjiang.
Xinjiang manufacturing is a promising opportunity as well, because the cost of manufacturing compared to first-tier cities and second-tier cities, the cost of manufacturing these goods is slightly lower, so I can save on expenses for my business.
There's lots of cultural and traditional things to see here. It'd be really, really interesting to see it and possibly incorporate it into some film productions.
Among the centerpieces are exhibits on Xinjiang's mining technology and green energy. The expo showcases traditional Xinjiang farm produce and dairy products, as well as textile products. Some Australian merchants also said they hope to expand their business to Central Asia through Xinjiang. Xinjiang's import and export trade volume topped 350 billion yuan last year. That marks an increase of nearly 46% year-on-year. For the first time, the expo has also set up a Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area Enterprise Hall. Authorities also hope this expo will fully leverage the region's geographical advantages and promote its long-term economic and trade cooperation with Central Asian and European countries. Jacqueline, TVB News, Urumqi.
A Hong Kong court today completed the mitigation hearing for the first 5 defendants in the subversion conspiracy case involving 47 opposition figures. A judge rejected defendant Benny Tai's contention that he did not have a role in the 2020 pan-democratic primary election after the national security law came into force. This is the second day of mitigation pleas for the 45 people convicted of taking part in a conspiracy to commit subversion. Mimo Singhai reports.
The mitigation hearing for the first batch of 5 defendants, including 4 organizers of the 2020 pan-democratic primary election who pleaded guilty, continued at West Kowloon Law Courts today. The defendants are Benny Tai, Au Nok Kin, Andrew Jiu, Ben Zhong, and Gordon Ng. Benny Tai's lawyer continued to plead for his client. The defense said actions related to the case conducted by Tai were not illegal before the introduction of National Security Law, or NSL. He questioned why those actions would be seen illegal after the introduction of NSL. The defense also said Tai withdrew from the primary election after NSL took effect. Judge Andrew Chan said there was consistency in Tai's actions. The defense stressed that Tai's actions were not against the law, adding the court should focus on the behavior of those who got elected in the primary election and whether they actually vetoed the budget. Judge Johnny Chan disagreed and said the primary election could bring about a chain reaction. He also rejected the contention that Tai had no responsibility in the event after the passage of the NSL. Tai's lawyer said he has long held the belief against violence and he did nothing violent. He said Tai genuinely thought that his actions were not illegal. Judge Johnny Chan said the accusations against Tai were not about violence. The defense said 3 people had written mitigation letters for Tai, including legal academics Albert Chen and Eric Chen, as well as Patrick So. Chen mentioned Tai's contribution to the legal sector, while So talked about Tai's involvement in the church. The defense for the second defendant, Au Lok Hin, requested a 50% reduction in the sentence. The defense said Au had announced his withdrawal from the election on social media. The court said the election was completed by then, and the organizers did not have much influence at that point. The third defendant, Andrew Jiu, asked for a 60% reduction in the sentence. Jiu's lawyer said the involvement of his client in the election was short and the work was related to administration. The court, however, said Power for Democracy had joined the planning of the election between March and April 2020. The 4th defendant, Ben Zhong, requested a 50% reduction in the sentence. Defense for the 5th defendant, Gordon Ng, described his client as an outsider in the event. Judge Alex Lee said Ng's proposal of a voting strategy, say no to primary dodgers, was also part of the crimes plan. The mitigation hearing for the first group of defendants ended today. Mitigation pleas for the second group will be heard next Tuesday. Mims 9, TVB News.
The food and beverage sector will offer discounts to celebrate July 1st and the 27th anniversary of the establishment of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. According to catering sector lawmaker Tommy Chung, more than 2,000 restaurants have signed up and will display a special label. Diners will be offered a 29% discount, paying 71% of the price to represent the 7th month and its first day. In some restaurants, it may only apply to some dishes, and the time and date of the promotion may differ. Chung said he will encourage more businesses to take part. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Stay cool and dry in the scorching weather. Maybe bring a towel. Bye for now.